Hi, I'm Clint Johnson and I'm a speech-language pathologist with Duper Publications. And today we're going to be talking about our HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Test by Elizabeth Wigg and Wayne Secord. Before I begin talking about the test and the features of it, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we developed this test. This test was developed because we were doing research on our HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Software. And for that, we needed a test that would test phonological awareness and give us some pre- and post-test scores. So what we used was the Emerging Literacy and Language Assessment, which is also published by Duper Publications, and we only used the phonological awareness section of that test. It gives us standard scores and percentile ranks. Well, as we were testing, our researchers just kept coming back to us again and again and saying, I wish I could just purchase this part of the test. I really like this. This really helps me to judge who needs to use the HearBuilder software and who's benefiting from it. So we listened to everybody, and from that, we talked to Elizabeth and Wayne, and we made the HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Test. And it's also called the HPAT. The HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Test is going to come with 25 record forms, a stimulus book, and an examiner's manual. It's normed on 1,276 children in over 40 states. It's for ages 4.5 to 9/11, and it's going to include 15 subtests. These subtests include letter sound identification, rhyming, initial sound identification, blending words, syllables, and sounds, segmenting words, syllables, and sounds, deleting initial and final sounds, and substituting initial and final sounds. This complements the HearBuilder software program, but you don't have to use it with HearBuilder software. You can use it with whatever phonological awareness treatment you're doing. The 15 subtests are going to include letter sound identification, rhyme awareness part 1, rhyme awareness part 2, rhyme production, initial sound identification, blending words, blending syllables, blending sounds, segmenting words, segmenting syllables, segmenting sounds, sound deletion in the initial position, sound deletion in the final position. And the last two subtests are sound substitution in the initial position and sound substitution in the final position. The test is really easy to administer. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do it, and there are start ages and ceilings and basals for each activity, so it goes rather quickly. So what we're going to do is we open up our stimulus book, and I'm going to hold that right here. Now this is not an easel format. I'm just going to open it up, and I'm going to set it straight on the table. And then I have my record form right here. And all of your directions are written right on the record form. This is really easy for you. It's going to tell you your start ages. It's going to tell you what the ceiling is. For this first subtest, letter sound identification, that's going to be 5 consecutive incorrect answers. And then we have 2 trial items. Now what's different about this is when you give the 2 trial items, if the child misses both of them, then you don't have to give that subtest. You just move on to the next subtest. So what I'm going to do now is I'll read you just a sample question from here. And as I said, this is letter sound identification. So I'm going to say, tell me the sound this letter makes. And the child will see this. And hopefully he will say, B. If he doesn't say that, I'm going to say, listen, this is the letter B. It makes the B sound. Now it's your turn. I'm going to show you a letter, and you tell me the sound this letter makes. And then I would move on to trial 2, and then I would move on to the rest of the items. And there are 10 items on this section. Again, if the child misses 5 in a row, you move on to the next subtest. Our second subtest, and this is the only other one that's going to use our stimulus book, so I'll show you this. And as you can see, we have cute, super duper pictures. This one's going to be rhyme awareness. And again, I'm going to say, let's look at some pictures. Tell me which pictures sound the same. Look carefully. Bear. Now look at these pictures. Bike, pear, tape. Which words sound the same as bear? And then I'm going to have the child point to the pear. Again, if the child misses it and he misses the other trial item, move on to the next section. And there are only 7 items on this subtest. We move on to the next subtest, and that's going to be rhyme awareness. And what happens here now? I'm done with this stimulus book. Everything is in your record form. All you're doing is reading directly to the child. So I'm going to say, now you try one. Listen carefully. Run, sun, fun. Do these words sound the same? And the child answers yes or no. And then you move through the items. For the fourth subtest, we're going to have rhyme production. Here I'm going to give you two words, and then you give me the words that rhyme. So I'm going to say tie, my, and you give me two responses that rhyme with that. If you don't give me but one response, the item's wrong, I move on to the next item. So, and then now we're going to get to subtest 5. This is going to be initial sound identification. Again, everything just straight from the record form. This is for ages 4.5 and older. I'm looking at 5 consecutive incorrect answers as my ceiling. I'm going to ask you, listen to the word cat. Do you hear this word starts with the ka sound? Now it's your turn. Listen to this word, book. Tell me what sound this word starts with. And then you're going to go through each one. All you're going to do is ask the child to give you the sound that the word starts with. If the child misses 5 on this one, I move to the next subtest. The next one we're going to go on to is blending words. And here I'm going to give you 2 words. You just put those 2 together. So I'm going to say wind, shield. And wait for the child to put that together and say windshield. Team, mate. And wait for the child again, teammate. Our next subtest is called blending syllables. And on this one, I'm going to blend 2 syllables together. Trial items are administered exactly the same. The start ages are exactly the same. So I'm going to say baker. Child puts the 2 together and he says baker. I'm going to say muffin. Child puts those 2 together, says muffin. Again, we have 5 consecutive incorrect responses. We move on to the next subtest if the child gets them any 5 in a row wrong. For the next one, we have blending sounds. And here, we're getting a little bit harder now. I'm going to give you just the sounds that are in a word. So I'm going to say a, ch. I'm going to say ah. And wait for the child, and hopefully they'll say off. N, o, s. And then the child says nose. I'm going to say m, a, k. And the child says make. So that is our blending sound section. And if you have any questions about how you're pronouncing these words, before you begin this test, if you go online, we have a simple web address that you can go to and listen to the recommended pronunciation for all of the words that are in this test. For subtest 9, I'm going to do segmenting words. And here, I'm going to start breaking those words apart. So we were doing our blending words, now we're going to start separating them. Here I'm going to say, take these words and make them into 2 words. Schoolyard. And the child says, schoolyard. Lifeguard. And the child says, lifeguard. For subtest 10, again, we're talking about segmenting here. I'm going to start segmenting syllables. So now I'm going to ask the child to break these words into their syllables. Camel. Cam-ul. Grasshopper. Again, waiting for the child to break those words into 3 syllables. Grasshopper. Okay? Add them all up. This one gets a little bit different because here now we're only going to let 5-year-olds do the segmenting syllables. So the 4.5-year-olds, we know that they're going to have a little harder time with this. So at 5, we can do this activity. By the time I get to subtest 11, this is going to be for 5.5-year-olds. So now we're segmenting sounds. Again, a much harder activity, not something that we expect our 4.5, 5-year-olds to do. We expect the 5.5-year-olds to be able to do this. So I'm going to give you a simple single-syllable word. There is one 2-syllable word on here. And I'm going to say break this down into the sounds. And so I say bus, and the child says b-a-s, and breaks those words down into the sounds that they make. Okay, now we're going to get a little more difficult. This is subtest 12. This is sound deletion, and this is going to be deletion in the initial position. So I'm going to say hold, take away. What word does that make? And the child will say old. I can say cart, take away k. And the child says art. Again, we move through here. 5 consecutive incorrect responses is our ceiling. And then we're done. Move on to subtest 13. And this is going to be deletion in the final position. So now we're listening for that sound at the end of the word. I'm going to say time, take away m. Mine, take away n. Bake, take away k. Goat, take away t. And then the word we're looking for there is go. For subtest 14, and this is our hardest subtest. This is where kids really start to break down. This is called sound substitution. And I'm going to have you substitute a sound in the initial position. And so I'm going to say mop. Change the first sound to t. And you would get top. Or I'm going to say cake. Change the first sound to m. And you get make. So as you can see, this is a much more difficult task. This is where we expect, again, 5.5 and older only to be able to do this. If you were 4.5, I wouldn't even give you this subtest. For subtest 15, this is our last one. I have sound substitution, and this is going to be in the final position. And here I'm going to listen to the word, and I'm going to change the last sound in that word. So I'm going to say mat. Change the last sound to, or I'm going to say leave. Change the last sound to, I'm going to say C. Change the last sound to O. And for that one, we would get the word so. Again, I'm going to add up all of my correct and incorrect responses, and I'm going to start scoring this. I'm going to look at the front of my form. I'm going to carry all of those scores over after I've added the incorrect and correct responses up, and I'm going to put my raw scores all right here. Now, if you'll notice on this form, you're going to be able to get a separate standard score for rhyming, for blending, for segmenting, for sound deletion, for sound substitution, and then you're also going to be able to get one total standard score. What's so great about this is that not all kids have difficulty with rhyming. Some kids can really do it well. Some kids can blend words together. They don't have issues with that. It's when they get to sound substitution that they start to fall apart. So what you're going to get here is a separate standard score for every subtest, and then you're also going to get one overall standard score. So this is really great for pinpointing the areas where the child's going to have difficulty. So then I'm going to look in my examiner's manual. I'm going to get all my normative data from there, and as you can see, all your charts are located here in the back. You look up the child's chronological age, find the correct scores that go with it, and I'm going to get my standard scores, percentile ranks, and age equivalents. What's also great is that if I look in the back of the manual, I'm going to find the parent, guardian, teacher checklist. And this is awesome for sending home just to see what kind of literacy skills are occurring in the home. So this is a reproducible form. You can send this home. You can even just send this to all of the people in the class and just see who might be having some issues with their literacy or phonological awareness skills. Now, why does the HPAT correlate so well to the HearBuilder software? What's so neat about this is that every single subtest that's in the HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Test is also found in the HearBuilder Phonological Awareness software. So everything that's covered in here, in this test, you're going to find in the HearBuilder Phonological Awareness software. So when you're doing your pre and post test, you know that you have covered every single skill when you establish that baseline data. And if you're doing response to intervention programs, you can really see the change in your students. So I really encourage you to use the HPAT with your HearBuilder Phonological Awareness software. But as I was saying, you don't have to have the HearBuilder software. This is a standalone phonological awareness test. If you're doing any other type of phonological awareness intervention, this covers every single area of phonological awareness. The HearBuilder Phonological Awareness Test is going to include 25 record forms, the stimulus book, and the examiner's manual. Great test, and we're really happy about it. Again, it's the HPAT, and you can learn more about this product at superduperinc.com or visit us on Facebook to share your ideas.